Good day! My topic is all about the impact of reputational risk to company success, researched by Harleen Christine Salazar. For the introduction, putting up business is not so easy. For the business to be successful, owners must possess qualities and qualification which is highly needed for the business growth. Their general goal is to maximize their potentials by adding driving forces where important and eliminating restraining forces where appropriate. But companies have always faced risks that could damage their image or reputation. With this full-blown crisis, companies need to be quick and agile to respond. Reputational risk is not a new concept, but it has no established definition and thinking on the subject is still evolving. A lack of common standards of definition of reputational risk means that companies perceive it in different ways. Many view reputation as a risk of risk. Others do not even classify it as a risk category but instead see it as an impact. Let me first define you what is reputation and risk. Reputation is a common opinion that people have about someone or something, while risk is a probability or threat of damage, injury, liability, loss, or any other negative occurrence that caused by external or internal vulnerabilities and that may be avoided through preemptive action. Reputational risk, as defined by U.S. Federal, is the potential negative publicity regarding an institution's business practices, whether true or not, will cause a decline in the customer base, costly litigation, or revenue reductions. So what comes in your mind when you hear reputational risk? Another definition of reputational risk is a threat or danger to the good name or standing of a business or entity. Actually, reputational risk can occur through a number of ways. First, direct. Directly as the result of the actions of the company itself. Second, indirect. Indirectly due to the actions of an employee or employees. And lastly, tangentially through other peripheral parties such as joint venture, partners, or suppliers. The main purpose of this research is to identify the impact of reputational risk to the success of service business industry, specifically this company, the image, the level of likelihood and consequences of its risk, and the methods they use to mitigate risk. I'll choose not to reveal the real name of the company to secure the confidentiality of the details and information gathered. I'll name it the image just to emphasize the topic of this research. So for the overview of the company, it is a top pizza and pasta chain in the Philippines. As of 2005, there are over 240 stores and an annual revenue of over 4 billion pesos. For the mission of the company, to strengthen relationship through bonding and sharing over best tasting and best value pizzas and pastas. For the visions, to be the dominant and unquestionable #1 pizza and pasta destination. For the research instruments, the researcher used questionnaire in gathering data. The first part of the questionnaire gave the information about the different risks that an industry may encounter. The second part of the questionnaire gave information about the level of likelihood of the risk. The third part gave information about the level of consequences of the risk, and the last part of the questionnaire is about the method of treatment that business industry may take. Follow-up interview also consider. Data gathering procedure. For the data gathering procedure, the questionnaire was prepared by the researcher comprehensively so that the respondents can easily answer. Before the researcher proceeded in administering the questionnaire, the researcher explained first the purpose of the study, and after that, the questionnaire is disseminated. For the statement of the problem, the researcher wants to know first, what are the potential risks that the business is experiencing? Next, what is the level of likelihood of the risk? Third, what is the level of consequences of the risk? Fourth, what is the impact of reputational risk to the business? And lastly, what are the methods of treatment do business will take? For the statistical treatment, I'll use likelihood scale. Next is consequences scale. And of course, in analyzing the level of risk, I use this formula. Level of risk is equals to consequences multiplied by likelihood. For the findings, study shows that the food chain industry and other business industries experience different risks. Those risks associated in food chain industries are reputational risk, product risk, liability risk, operational risk, strategic risk, environmental risk, investment risk, market risk, inflation recession risk, and mortality and morbidity risk. Second findings is study shows that the reputational risk, product risk, operational risk, strategic risk are happen once a year. Third findings is study shows with regard to the financial losses of the company, reputational risk, product risk, legal risk, operational risk, environmental risk, inflation and recession risk, mortality and morbidity can losses financial greater than 150,000 pesos. And for the fourth findings, study shows that the impact of reputational risk will affect the company's operation as well as the company's reputation. And of course, lastly, in avoiding risk is the company's priority among other strategies. So next is for the conclusion of the study. First conclusion is the risk encountered by the company may vary depending on the type of business they operated. Next is, aside from environmental risk, reputational risk, product risk, operational risk, strategic risk are common risks that business may encounter and give a severe impact to the company's success. That, if these risks do not address and resolve immediately, business has a potential for loss or bankruptcy. Third, the cause or loss of any risk is depending on the weight it has and the range and wide of business operation. Fourth, reputational risk is one of the major risks that can affect the entire business operation. This is not a simple risk that can easily handle and can exist only within the premises, but it is a risk that can easily spread and communicated to different people with different perceptions. And with these differences, chances of misunderstanding and misinterpretation is possible. And lastly, the most priority of the businessman for them not to burden costs due to different risks is to avoid it as soon as possible. And lastly, for the recommendation, additional conclusion, environmental risk is the most severe problem that company may encounter, as perceived by my first respondents, that this may charge a huge cost for the company to re-establish again and to bring back the equilibrium of the company. But with my interview to the much older one who actually worked more than 10 years as a branch manager, reputational risk has the most severe impact to the company's future success. This concludes that the impact of risk may differ on the views who actually experiencing it, the level of understanding, the level of likelihood and consequences. For the recommendations of my research, first is companies should prepare and construct a detailed risk management plan and a budget for implementation. Next, a structured strategic plan is needed to address the potential risk, and since people are only capable to resolve it, the company must ensure that their employees are capable enough by providing proper training, skills, and knowledge development program, and the strong personality development is needed too. Next is, risks are always a spouse of cost, so that money is very important. Contingency fund must be settled and secured so that in case of emergency, there is something which will be used to resolve the risk. Fourth, ensuring the privacy of internal and external problems are very important to eliminate criticism from the others, so that the company should ensure that communications and informations are controlled. And lastly, avoiding risk is what every people are trying to do. But in case this is not possible, another methods can be used like reducing risk, transferring it, or accept the risk. That's all. Thank you.